This story was burned, buried, and banned for 100 years until tonight. Beneath a bruised moon on the outskirts of Prague in 1883, the fog rolled in like breath from an unseen mouth. Cold, thick, alive, beneath gaslights that flickered like dying stars, a gaunt violinist named Lukáš wandered, his ribs pressing against the inside of his shirt like bars of a cage. His boots were torn, his fingers numb, and in his chest only music and hunger remained. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, but what he found that night would feed him neither. At the center of the crossroads lay no coin, no bread, but a violin, not ordinary. Its wood was blackened like cinders, but smooth as if never burned. The scroll was carved into 12 screaming faces, mouths open in agony, their expressions forever twisted in silence. The strings shimmered in the dark, humming a faint, dissonant lullaby no human hand played. And the bow was strung not with horsehair, but long silver strands of something finer, something human. Lukáš should have walked away, but hunger makes fools of men, and artists even greater fools. With trembling hands, he picked it up. The wood pulsed warm, alive, and when he cradled it beneath his chin, the wind stilled. The world was quiet, too quiet, like something had just inhaled and was waiting to exhale. That night, Lukáš collapsed onto his attic cot, the violin cradled like a child at his side. Rain tapped the window panes like fingers seeking entry. He closed his eyes, and immediately the world changed. He stood alone on the stage of a grand, crumbling theater. The velvet curtains sagged, dust hung in the air like frozen breath. The audience, dozens, maybe hundreds of shadowy figures, sat utterly still, but they clapped. Not with joy, not with rhythm, their hands struck in perfect, soulless unison, clap, clap, clap. Hollow, mechanical, as if they were welcoming something, not him. He looked down. The violin was in his hands again, but now it bled. Red rivulets oozed from beneath the strings, soaking his fingers. His fingertips burned, then split open. Blood streamed down the bow as he tried to drop it, but it clung to him. The violin began to play on its own, a slow, mournful dirge. When Lukáš awoke screaming, his sheets were damp, not with sweat, but blood. His own, each fingertip torn, as if he'd been playing in his sleep, and from the far corner of the attic, where he hadn't placed it, came a faint sound. The violin was playing itself. For 3 nights, Lukáš tried not to sleep. He hid the violin beneath floorboards, behind walls, even tossed it into the sewer once, only to find it propped neatly against his chair by morning. Sleep came anyway, and with it, the whispers. At first, they were faint, murmurs crawling along the edge of consciousness. He couldn't understand the language, something ancient, guttural, like old wood creaking underwater. But on the 4th night, the whispers grew bolder, closer, and they began to say names. Jan, Eliška, Karel, They breathed, one after another, a dozen names, spoken not in anger, but sorrow. Each name a drop of cold water sliding down his spine. He wrote them down in the dark with trembling hands over and over, hoping that naming them might make them leave. But with each name he wrote, the room grew colder. One name was repeated more than the others. Eliška. Eliška. He whispered it aloud, and the candle blew out. And from the violin came a soft laugh. Lukáš could bear no more. He dragged the violin to the fireplace with shaking hands. It had begun to whisper to him in daylight now, low voices curling behind his ears like smoke. He doused the wood with lamp oil, stuffed the hearth with coal, and struck the match with fury. The flames leapt high, orange, then green, then blue. It screamed, not the violin, the fire itself. The sound poured from the chimney like a banshee's cry. The 12 carved faces on the scroll twisted in agony. He swore he saw them move, melt. He ran outside, choking on smoke. When he returned at dawn, ash clung to the walls. The floorboards were scorched, and on the table where he left nothing, the violin waited, unharmed, not a scratch, not a scorch mark, its strings perfectly tuned, its bow coiled beside it like a resting snake. Lukáš dropped to his knees. The whispering had stopped, but the silence felt worse, not empty, expectant. The names were still etched into his mind. Now they began to echo without sound, like the memory of a song you never heard, but somehow knew. Eliška, Karel. He touched the violin again. It was warm, too warm, and under his palm it pulsed once, like a heartbeat. On the 13th night, the moon vanished, not behind clouds, gone. No light slipped through the attic windows. Lukáš woke without knowing why, but he wasn't alone. He couldn't move. His limbs were pinned by fear, or something worse. All around his bed stood 12 figures, still, silent, their mouths stitched shut with violin strings. The flesh was gray, brittle. Their eyes wept black. They didn't speak. They breathed, not in unison, not human. Heavy, jagged exhales scraped through the air like bows across rusted strings. And in the center of the room, the violin floated. No hands, no strings. It hovered just above his chest, bow poised. Then it lowered itself into his grasp. He didn't want to touch it, but his fingers obeyed. The moment the bow kissed the strings, they screamed. Each of the 12 opened their mouths as the threads tore loose. Sound exploded in the attic, not music. Pain, a wailing centuries old. The violin blazed in his hands, glowing from within, and his fingers, once torn, now bled freely again, strings cutting into flesh. He couldn't stop. The tune forced itself through him. His muscles obeyed the melody. When it ended, the shadows surged forward. Morning light broke over Prague, but not in the attic. That place no longer existed. Smoke drifted from the window, but no fire was ever found. No Lukáš, no bodies, just the faint echo of strings still trembling in the silence. Miles away, At the same old crossroads where Lukáš had once found it, the violin waited. It sat as if gently placed by careful hands, pristine, untouched. Except there was something new. The scroll, once carved with 12 screaming faces, now bore 13, and the 13th wore Lukáš's eyes. Below it, etched into the neck, a faint inscription shimmered in morning dew. Some say the violin whispers only at night. Others claim you can hear it any time if you're truly empty enough. And if you listen, if you dare stop at that crossroads, you may hear 13 voices whispering, waiting for a 14th. But remember, hunger makes fools of us all.